So we had seen in the life of Sri Ramakrishna how the Brahmani came and she initiated him into the disciplines of Tantra and then into Vaishnavism, and he also had the darshan of Bhagavan Ram, and he did the upasana of Radhaji also, and the form of Sri Krishna also he had the darshan of. Now comes the next aspect of his life. So as we have seen earlier that in his life the gurus come into his life as per the need that he requires. He doesn't go in search of the gurus. So 1861 onwards he was training under the Brahmani. Now 1864 is when this wandering monk Jatadhari, he had come into his life. Now comes at the end of 1864 one great Vedantic master in his life, and his name is Totapuri Maharaj. So Ramakrishna Paramhamsa had already experienced the personal form, the forms of the Lord that he worshipped. He had had darshan of those. To take him from that stage to the higher stage of Advaita, this great master came, and he was a Vedantic master, did sadhana of so many years, almost 40-45 years. He had he used to be naked, Digambara, and Ramakrishna would call him as Nangta, because this master had renounced. He is a sannyasi and he is a Digambar sannyasi, renounced worldly life, worldly possessions, worldly attachments, and following the path of Advait Vedant. So what is that path of Advait Vedant? That ultimate reality is one absolute Brahman, and that alone is real. It is real in the sense it is changeless in 3 periods of time, and there is no creation in that absolute level. But you and I are living at the realm of change, so we see a lot of changes happening in the world. So how is it that that changeless absolute can produce this changing world? So the power of this absolute Brahman is Maya, and using the power of Maya, this Brahman becomes Ishvara and creates this whole universe. Becomes the creator, sustainer and destroyer of the universe. So now Ramakrishna Paramhamsa has had the darshan of the form of the Lord, which he takes as the creator. The next level is to realize the absolute level, which is Brahman, where time, space, causation, everything ends, which we call as Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In Savikalpa Samadhi, there is the form of the Lord in which the mind is completely absorbed, one forgets oneself, but the form remains. One feels completely absorbed in that form. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is where all the three disappear. The experiencer, the experienced, and the experience, all the three gone. Then what remains? Absolute Brahman remains, which is consciousness alone. So now this is the stage that is called the state of Advaita, where there is no duality, which is beyond the creation, beyond Maya also, beyond all forms, and beyond formless sadhana also. In formless sadhana, one uses pointers of the self and contemplates that I am Brahman, I am not the body, this world is an illusion. So one does that contemplation. One doesn't fix the mind on a form, but one does this contemplation. Both these sadhanas ultimately culminate in the realization of that consciousness, which is non-dual. So now that is happened. So that path of Vedanta is called the path of negation. Neti, neti. It is said in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Not this, not this. Meaning two times he said neti, neti. To reject or negate what is gross, whatever is visible, tangible, that this is not real. And whatever is subtle, which is intangible. So mind, intellect, emotions, desires, vasanas, ignorance, all this is negated. Negator who is negating also is negated. Then what remains? Only consciousness remains. So this is the state which he has to experience. See, this is Vedanta is not a verbal, not a informative knowledge or a intellectual knowledge. It is experiential knowledge in samadhi. Literally, time, space, object, this whole creation disappears. Like how when we wake up, the dream world completely disappears. It's not an intellectual information that I am a waker, I am still experiencing the dream world. No, no, no. It goes because it's a different dimension of consciousness. That state is what Ramakrishna has to experience. And so, to initiate him into this great master, Totapuri Maharaj, comes into his life. It is said that this great master, he was born in Punjab, and 700 sadhus and sannyasis were trained by him. From a very early stage in his life, he had taken to the path of Advaita Vedanta, and many monks were initiated by him. And he is such a master who believes that the form of God is a delusion of the mind. That is his understanding from the standpoint of Advaita. See, this is not to say that they are non-believers of God, but what they believe is there is no creator, so the creation also has not come into being, and this body also is an illusion. What many atheists believe is, I am real, but God is not there. God is a fantasy of human mind. That is not what this master's experience is. When they say that form of God also is an imagination of the mind, they say that from the higher standpoint, that this is also illusion, the world is also illusion, and the creator. All the three are an illusion. They are not real. If somebody says that I am real, world is real, but creator is an illusion, then that person has not thought clearly. Because how can the effect be there without a cause? So he is a master who is abiding in that state where one knows that this body is an illusion, the world is an illusion, so is the creator from the standpoint of Advaita. And he lived in tremendous self-control because the cravings of mind are not there. When one knows that this is an illusion and one has practiced that sadhana, living in sense control is very important. In the Gita, Bhagavan gives in the 12th chapter the qualities of who is ready for Advaita Vedanta and who is ready for this contemplation on the formless to realize the state of Advaita. So there he gives three qualities: Sanniyamya Indriya Gramam, Sarvatra Samabuddhayaha, and Sarvabhuta Hiterataha, Te Prapnuvanti Mameva. These people will attain me in my absolute state. Who are they? They who have complete sense control. Sanniyamya Indriya Gramam, all the senses, not just one or two. All 10 senses must be in one's control. Then mind level, equanimous at all times, Sarvatra Samabuddhayaha. And they who are engaged in the service of the society, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. And their service is not that they are serving and somebody else is benefiting. Their service is all of us are one. So just like we take care of our body, we are serving the whole universe because there is only one Brahman appearing as all this. Such a mind which has become equanimous, such senses which are controlled, that person is ready for Advaita Vedanta. And that's why the Lord says that if somebody has a deep attachment to the body, Advaita Vedanta is not for them. They should choose the path of the form. Klesho adhikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavadbhiravapyate. They who have deep body identification, if they choose the path of the formless, they will go through tremendous sorrow. Because senses are not in control, mind is not equanimous, selflessness is not there. And one is saying, I don't believe in form of God, I only do formless worship. Then that person will go through a lot of sorrow because one will not progress anywhere. Not that these three are not required in the worship of the form. You see, Ramakrishna also had so much of vairagya. When he is worshipping Mother Kali, his mind doesn't get into any sense objects or anything. His mind is very pure. So in the path of bhakti, also these three are required. There's no doubt in that. But suppose one doesn't have it, then one can cultivate it on the way also. And one seeks the grace of the Supreme Lord to get that three qualifications. Here, the devotion aspect is not there in the sense that one is not believing that there is a creator. One thinks that the world is illusion, body is illusion. So there is no support. And in that state, if one doesn't have the sense control, one falls. It is a situation worse than even the person who is not a seeker. So a person who is ready for this Advaita Vedanta is this person who has self-control, equanimity of mind, selflessness. And Totapuri Maharaj had lived like that for 40 years. He practiced austere disciplines on the banks of Narmada river and came to experience the identity with the Absolute. So he roamed in the world like a Jivan Mukta. That person is called Jivan Mukta, who realizes oneness with the infinite Absolute while living here and now. That person is Jivan Mukta, roams the world sharing this knowledge with whoever is ready for it. And so, just clad in a loin cloth, he would spend his days like an avadhut. There is no fixed place of residence for him. He won't stay in a place more than 3 days. We find in Srimad Bhagavatam that Shukdev ji was also like that. In fact, in Bhagavatam it is written that Shukdev ji will not stay in a place more than the time taken to milk a cow. Completely unattached to anything, anyone. Sadhu behta bhala. It is like pani behta bhala, sadhu chalta bhala. It is like that. So they are called avadhut. They live completely free. So he had been traveling like that, and it is said that once he had gone to Gangaji, and he was traveling on the banks of Gangaji, and by the divine will, he was led to Dakshineshwar. And when he came to Dakshineshwar, he met Ramakrishna Paramahamsa there, and the moment he saw him, intuitively he knew that Ramakrishna is ready for Advaita Vedanta now. And also it is that he told Ramakrishna that I have come here and you have to get initiated into Advaita Vedanta. You know what Ramakrishna did? He said, you wait, because my life is not in my control. The Divine Mother has to permit me. Then only I will learn. So he goes to the temple. He asks the mother that this Namta has come and he wants to initiate me into Advait Vedant, and he's telling me it is beyond you also. So what should I do? Now just think about it. He look at his life and his purity and his surrender. He asked the Divine Mother that you tell me what should I do? Because his bhav also is, I am a child, you are my mother, you guide me, I will do what you tell me. So the mother says, yes, I have only sent him here. Now learn what he is saying. And so it is that Ramakrishna comes back to him and he says, my mother has said yes, so now you tell me what has to be done. So Totapuri Maharaj told him that Advaita can be realized by a sannyasi. See, there are two aspects in this. One is that one has to be a sannyasi in the mind, complete detachment. Then second is the external sannyas. Now the external sannyas is given where the tuft, till the one doesn't take sannyas, a grahasthi will have a tuft, will have a choti. Because that is the symbol that one has to do, where one will have the Janevu and one will have the choti. And one has to do the Gayatri Mantra Sandhya Vandan and study the scriptures, have the Ishta Devata, do the Upasana, do the Japa. Those are practices to attain these qualifications, the purity of the mind, complete sense control, equanimity, selflessness, all these. So Ramakrishna already has those internal qualities. That is why Totapuri Maharaj said he is ready. Then formally, externally also, because Totapuri Maharaj is a very orthodox Vedantin. He will go as per the Vedic knowledge, Vedic tradition. So he says, before I initiate you into sannyas, into Vedant, you have to take sannyas. Now Ramakrishna says to him that yes, I am ready to get initiated, but you have to perform this ceremony in secret, because my mother is still there and she will not allow me to take sannyas. Because the rules of some sannyasis is such that then one cuts the ties with the whole family, with everyone. So the mother is still there. So he said that I am ready to take sannyas if you need me to take sannyas, because the mother told me now I have to follow what you are saying. But I also have an old mother in Kamarpukur. She will be shocked if she sees me as a sannyasi. So you initiate me into formal rites of sannyas, but I will not wear clothes of sannyasi, and because my mother is there, and you cannot perform this ceremony in public. And also the second reason is that he is married. Now, as per the tradition of ours, if a married person has to take sannyas, the permission of the spouse is very important. So Totapuri Maharaj said, okay, I will initiate you, but you have to, but it is okay, you don't have to wear the orange clothes, but you have to follow the disciplines of sannyas. He said that I will follow. What process you tell me, I will follow. So Ramakrishna got initiated by Totapuri Maharaj. So as per the tradition then, so in sannyas tradition, one does the Shraddha karma of the 3 generations of Pitrus, because as a householder that is one's duty. So one finishes the Shraddha karma for the 3 generations of ancestors, meaning the present generation, the parents and grandfather and great grandfather, 3 of them. So he did the Shraddha karma of all of them. Then one does one's own Shraddha karma also when one takes sannyas. That also he did. Then there is a Viraja Homa that is done. In that Viraja Homa, one chants the mantras, offers the ahutis, and with each mantra, when one offers the ahutis, one is symbolically offering away all the attachments as well as the body identification. So the five koshas are there: Annamaya, body; Pranamaya, the vital air; Manomaya is the mind; Vijnanamaya is the intellect; Anandamaya is the bliss sheath. These five, when we transcend, we come to realize the Atma. So these five attachments to these five have to be dropped. So he did the Viraja Homa also. Then one goes into the river, takes a dip. There Gangaji herself is there. So one takes a dip and chants the mantra Bhuhu Sanyastam Maya, Bhuvah Sanyastam Maya, Suvah Sanyastam Maya. I give up this any sense cravings in this world, in the interspace, and in the heavens. I want nothing from these three worlds. And then comes formally, the disciple goes to the teacher, and the teacher cuts away the tuft, gives new clothes, orange clothes or ochre clothes, and a new name. So this last part, the new name and the clothes alone did not happen. Rest of the things Ramakrishna went through. And now he is ready for getting initiated into Advaita Vedanta. So Ramakrishna sat down and Totapuri Maharaj is initiating him through the Upanishad mantras. So actually what happens is that the Guru initiates the disciple into the Mahavakya. Mahavakya meaning the statements which reveal the identity of the Jiva with Brahman. Like Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma. These are the four major Mahavakyas. There are many Mahavakyas, but of those many Mahavakyas, these four are most important. Each one is from one Veda. So he got initiated into them. And the master initiated him first through the fundamental principles of Vedanta and then into the Mahavakya. So the Upanishadic teachings he learnt. But when he tried to meditate that I am not the body, mind, intellect, I am that one pure consciousness, again and again the form of Mother Kali would come in front of his mind. And please remember, for him the form is not a picture, for him it is real. And so many attempts he makes, and he says that I am not able to transcend the form, and I am not able to experience that state of infinite consciousness that you are telling me. The form of the mother comes, her smile comes in front of me, and he says in one point, he says that it is hopeless. I cannot raise my mind to the unconditioned state and come face to face with the Atman. He says that the bewitching smile of the mother prevents me from passing into the great beyond. Again and again he tried, but he is not able to transcend. So Totapuri Maharaj said, what? You can't do it. Try again. And this time when he tried, Totapuri Maharaj took a piece of glass and he struck that glass here, right here in between, in his eyebrows, and he says, concentrate the mind here, and when the form comes into your mind, destroy that form. So Ramakrishna tried, and this time when the form came, he took the very sword from the from the hands of Mother Kali and cut the form. Meaning, with the sword of discrimination, he cut the form, went into the absolute state. 3 days time. Totapuri Maharaj could not believe. He said, what took me 40 years, you have accomplished in 3 days. Because he was ready. See, this is the point there. Because he was ready and his mind was so pure, senses are perfectly controlled, engaged in the welfare of the people around, that mind in 3 days time from the form glided into the absolute state. And of course 3 days is because the effort he was putting. The attempt where he went in, that happened in that one day, one attempt. And so Totapuri Maharaj, it is said, he cried out, is it possible that he has attained in a single day what took me 40 years of strenuous practice to achieve? Oh great God, it is nothing short of a miracle. Now Ramakrishna has experienced the absolute state. This is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and he kept practicing this now. See, it is not one-time experience. Please remember, enlightenment is not one-time experience that will happen just once and then one is realized all the time. Because the problem is not that we don't have a certain special experience and which we have to get at enlightenment. The problem is we don't know that we are the absolute truth. The ignorance is the problem, and because of that ignorance we think we are this jiva. Now we have built up that kind of thought process for a very long time. Many lives we have lived as the body. So it is the wrong identification that has to reduce, and then the ignorance has to be destroyed. So through steady contemplation and again getting into that experience of the absolute bliss, the unconditioned state, finally one comes to abide in that. The process is not to create that state. The process is only to remove all the obstacles, the false notions, the identification with the body. Those go away in the direct experience of the dissolution of the meditator, meditated, meditation. All the three gone. That is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So abhyas of Nirvikalpa Samadhi he kept doing and he finally gets established in that state. Now Totapuri Maharaj, he was a very great Advaitic master, and as we said, you know that Totapuri Maharaj did not have faith in any personal God, and also that he would not stay in a place for a long time. But it was very surprising that Totapuri Maharaj lived here for more than 11 months, because here is a very unique aspect that he has to learn now. That is interesting. Now that comes here. So what happens is, when Ramakrishna experiences this state of unconditioned absolute consciousness, and when he comes down from that state, for him Brahman also is real, and that Maya is a power of Brahman, and so that Maya and Brahman he doesn't discriminate. He thinks this Maya also is Brahman only. A Vedantin would say Maya is an illusion. But because Ramakrishna had that samskar of bhakti, for him this whole world is the Divine Mother herself, who is Maya, and that Maya is a power of Supreme Brahman. And in that state they are not different. Maya and Brahman are one in the absolute state. Now he has experienced this. But there is much more that he has to experience, and from him the world has to experience. So the Divine Mother had given him a command that you must, as per Tantra, you must stay focused here on the sixth chakra. So don't remain here at the seventh chakra, because that is absolute mukti. You focus yourselves here and you will have a glimpse of that as well as the world, because the body needs to be maintained for Loka Kalyan, for the benefit of the whole humanity. So Ramakrishna follows the instructions of the Divine Mother. Otherwise, for the Vairagya that he has, his mind would just get completely absorbed in that state, will never want to come down. So he remains in that state. So he alternates between form and the absolute state. Now here is one example where Totapuri Maharaj stayed there. He was not aware why he is compelled to stay there for so long, because his work with Ramakrishna is over actually, and Ramakrishna realized it very fast. So Totapuri Maharaj could have gone from there, but something kept him, it was as though making him stay there. And Ramakrishna, he was a great master, and satsang etc. was there, and many sadhus, sannyasis also used to come there. And so Ramakrishna, Totapuri Maharaj stayed there. One day, what happened? Totapuri Maharaj got a severe attack of dysentery, and he was in a lot of pain, and he was not able to focus his mind. Again and again, the body consciousness kept arising. So, what happened to him? He decided this body is useless, and this body is creating all this pain. Why should I keep this body alive? I don't want to keep this body alive. So he didn't care. He got up in the middle of the night, went into the Gangaji to drop the body. Let the Gangaji carry away the body. So he walked into the Gangaji. And walking, and water does not seem to be, even though it's going in the center of the river, the water is not rising above his knees. And he finds himself on the other shores of the river. 4, 5 times he does that. But he is not able to drown. And finally, when he does one more time, he goes across the shore and he turns again. Suddenly he sees this entire universe is only pervaded by the Divine Mother. Literally, he sees the form of Mother Kali. So what is said here is that the trees, the temples, the houses, all of them are pervaded by the presence of the Divine Mother. She is in everything, she is everything. She is in water, she is on land, she is the body, she is the mind, she is pain, she is comfort, she is knowledge, she is ignorance, she is life, she is death. She is everything that one sees, hears and imagines. Without her grace, no embodied being can go beyond her realm. And he experiences that man has no free will. He is not even free to die. Yet, beyond the body and mind, she resides in her transcendental absolute aspect. She is Brahman that Totapuri had been worshipping all his life. So what Ramakrishna experienced, that Brahman and Maya are one, after following the devotional path to Advaita, Totapuri Maharaj follows first Advaita and then comes to the Parabhakti, the devotional part. And it is then that Totapuri Maharaj recognized that why he was staying there for 11 months, because this is the lesson he had to learn, because his whole life he had not believed in the personal form. Now he has the experience of the personal form. So next morning, with Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Totapuri Maharaj goes into the Dakshineshwar Mandir and prostrates before Mother Kali. And finally, he takes the leave of the mother and Ramakrishna and he goes from there. Fulfilled that he also is now reveling in both form and absolute state, both. See, all these also explain to us that Advaita and Bhakti are one. If we say that Bhakti is separate, Advaita is separate, or there is fight between both these, that is all very superficial. Whichever path one starts, one will come to the absolute oneness. And while living in the world, one has to understand that there is an Ishvara and that Ishvara has a form. Whether one is a Advaitic or a Dvaitin or a Vishishta Advaitin doesn't matter. In Vyavahar, there is no Advaita. In transactional reality, there is duality. So wherever there is duality, there will be the reality which is with the form. Bhagavan has a form. So this is the final thing Totapuri Maharaj realized. Now, when Totapuri Maharaj went, one phase comes in the life of Ramakrishna Paramhamsa where he practices intense Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And in that intense Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what happens to him? He gets into that state of absolute oneness. For 6 months, he is in that state. And it is said, these are his own words, he says that I remained in that state from which ordinary men can never return. Generally, the body will fall off after 3 weeks like a sere leaf. 21 days maximum the body will stay for 21 days in that state, because even the breath will stop. Food, water though is already gone, because then the attention comes down to body level. So no food, no water, sometimes the breathing also has stopped. So he says that generally somebody's body will not be able to survive. But Ishwar Ichha will keep that body alive if something great has to happen through that body. And hence it is that he says, I was not conscious of day and night. Flies would enter my mouth and nostrils just as they do at dead bodies, but I did not feel them. My hair became matted with dust. During this 6 months period, there was one monk who was there at Dakshineshwar who preserved the body of Ramakrishna Paramhamsa. And he would sometimes forcefully open the mouth and put some food inside just to make that body survive. Now, these are all also experiences to understand that when Bhagavan says in the Gita that Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Yejana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhayuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyaham, I will take care of their nourishment as well as protecting what they have. Those who are constantly thinking of me. These masters are the example of that state. That verse we should understand clearly. It is not saying that we should not do our work. In people who are not yet ready for that absolute state, Bhagwan takes care of them by making them act for their survival, for their preservation through the ego. So they will have a desire that I must take care of the body, I must eat, I must earn, I must do this, I must do that. That survival instinct and the efforts being done for it are also divine will only. So Shankaracharya ji has called that as Purushartha. By invoking Purushartha in the seeker, the Lord takes care of their yoga and kshema. But in these great masters, there is no such ego. So who takes care? Bhagwan directly takes care or sends somebody to take care of that body. The individual is doing nothing for survival. Nothing means nothing. Just think, 6 months, no proper food, no proper water, breath has stopped so many times. Just like a dead body he is, but reveling in that state. And so he remained in that state for 6 months, it is. Finally, when he came out of that, the body has its own karma, as well as the laws of nature will apply to the body also some point or the other. So Ramakrishna was affected again by dysentery, and a lot of physical suffering he went through, and it is because of that that his mind came down to body level. You know, in course of time, whenever his mind used to go away like that, he would tell, it will come later also, he would tell his disciple, his nephew Hriday, that keep Rasagulla near me, because when I come out of that state, the mind has come, but this body awareness is still not there properly. So I am not able to transact properly. So keep the Rasagulla, because when I eat that Rasagulla, then the mind will actually come down fully to the body of consciousness. He has to use Rasagulla to come down to body consciousness. And we find it difficult to go into that state, leaving that Rasagulla. So this was the state of Ramakrishna. He lived in this way. And how would he think of the Supreme? Having experienced that state of absolute culmination in the absolute state, what would he experience? So he says here that when I think of the Supreme Being, that absolute being doesn't create anything, does not preserve, does not destroy. I call him Brahman as Purusha, the impersonal God. But when I think of him as active, creating, preserving, destroying, I call him Shakti or Maya, the personal God. The distinction actually makes no difference, he says. The personal and impersonal are one and the same thing. And he gives beautiful analogy, like the milk and its whiteness, the diamond and its luster, the snake and its wriggling motion. It is impossible to conceive of the one without the other. Three beautiful examples he has given. So this was the state in which he used to be. Now slowly what happens? The devotees, they start coming to him. He has gone through a lot of spiritual experiences, etc. So he started seeking the company of many devotees, sadhus, mahatmas, and many different types of people used to come to meet him. So Advaitic masters used to come to him, Dvaitic masters, Vaishnavais, Vedantins, Shaktas, then worshippers of various types of form of the Lord, Rama, Krishna, Durga, Devi. Different people would come because he has experienced a lot of these. Almost all these he has directly had experience. And so many of them would ask questions, doubts, and he would resolve. He would say, I have not studied the scriptures, I have not studied the Vedas, but I am telling you from my direct experience. And he would learn from them some of the scriptural things also. So it was a mutual relationship where he would learn from them and he would clarify also their doubts. At this time, when so many Mahatmas used to come and have satsang, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa had told Mathur Babu that you please keep lot of food, clothes, all that, and the basic necessities, so that these wandering monks who come, we can give to them. See, that is one way of the grahasthi also earning the punya karma, as well as the society supporting the wandering monks who can exclusively devote their time for seeking the Supreme. So now Ramakrishna, he had a very unique capability that when he heard something from somebody, we learn the scripture, we reflect on it, we try to memorize the shlokas or the mantras, etc. But Ramakrishna had a very different way of assimilation. And what he would do, when he heard something from a great scripture, he would meditate on that and he would come to experience it and make it his knowledge. That is called aparoksha anubhuti, the immediate experience. That intellectual knowledge in us, for us it is an intellectual knowledge, then we have to reflect, think, it takes time to internalize and assimilate. But in Ramakrishna's mind, it was very fast. He would assimilate the knowledge just like that. And hence, in that way, he kept learning, and many things became known to him from the scripture standpoint. Experience he has already had. So he would say, I have not read, but I have heard the learned, and I have made a garland of their knowledge, wearing it round my neck, and I have given it as an offering at the feet of the mother. Such a beautiful thing, that what he learns, it is not for his glory that he knows scriptures and all that. He has gone beyond all those things. So he says, I have made a garland of all these and I offered it at the feet of the Divine Mother. If you remember one of the sessions earlier, we have seen that one great scholar called Gauri had come when the Brahmani declared that Ramakrishna is an incarnation. This scholar Gauri had come and confirmed that yes, he is an incarnation. So that scholar Gauri came to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in 1870, and with the blessings of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he took sannyas. Another great Pandit, Narayana Shastri, he had mastered all the 6 schools of philosophy. They are called Shat Darshanas. Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa. These are 6 schools of thought. Shat Darshanas they are called. He had mastered all of them. Purva Mimamsa means Karma Kand. Uttara Mimamsa means Vedant. Nyaya is logic system. Vaisheshika is where we have this description of matter, Anu. You know that great Rishi, Kanada Rishi. He spoke about Anu, atom, and Paramanu, subatomic particles. So this Kanada school, Vaisheshika. So Nyaya, Vaisheshika. Sankhya is Kapil Muni, who says Prakriti and Purusha. And Yoga is Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So 6 schools of philosophy, this Narayan Shastri had mastered all these 6. And he came to the great master Ramakrishna, leaving the job that was being offered to him by the Maharaja of Jaipur. And he came to dedicate his life and got initiated again into sannyas by the help of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So that way, many great saints, scholars, seekers, they all used to come there. Now it is also said that Ramakrishna had practiced certain disciplines of other religions also. So he practiced certain disciplines of Islam and came to realize the absolute through Islam also. He practiced certain disciplines of Christianity and came to realize it through that also. So in his life we find that he has taken the best of all the religions, and the ultimate experience he has come to is the same non-dual absolute truth. Even Buddhism. So he says here that he accepted the divinity of Buddha also, and Jainism also. So he followed many of these certain practices of each of these, and he came to realize. So in him there's a synthesis of all. So in that way he is a great symbol to say that if the core of each of them is practiced properly, and all of them finally say that ego has to be dropped, then the absolute only will be realized. So this is what he did, and he would give a very simple, nice example, and he would say, why are people fighting? Between religions there is so much of fight. Within the religions, each of the religions, there are so many divisions. Even in our Hindu culture, there are so many divisions and sects. each of them will lead us to the divine, but when we don't know that, then we fight. So he would say that, you know, the Vaishnavas, uh, the Shaktas, the Shaivites, many of them fighting with each other. In Christianity, they have Roman Catholic and Adventist and Protestant, and in Islam, they have Shia and Sunni and Ahmadiyya and a lot of them. So he would say, why are all these religions and inter-religion fights are also there, intra-religious fights are also there. So he would say that a lake has several ghats. This is a nice analogy that he gives. A lake has several ghats. At one, the Hindu takes water in pitchers and calls it jal. At another, the Muslims take water in the leather bags and call it pani. At a third, the Christians call it water. Can we imagine that it is not jal but only pani or water? How ridiculous. The substance is one under different names and everyone is seeking the same substance. Only the climate, temperament and the name creates differences. So let each man follow his path. If sincerely and ardently he wishes to know God, he will surely realize. So he also used to dispel all these myths and the quarrels and many things. And if you find that one thing is common in many saints across religions, across various time periods, that they finally say that truth is only one. Why are we fighting with each other and getting attached to our path and then saying only that path will lead? Let each one take whichever path. So the Vedic culture actually is like that. But human beings, we get attached to the path. So in the Vedas, a beautiful mantra many of you may know, Ano Bhadra Kratavo Yantu Vishwatah. From across the world, may all noble thoughts, auspicious thoughts come to us from across the world. Another beautiful analogy which is given is Akashat Patitam Toyam Sagaram Prati Gacchati Sarvadeva Namaskaraha Keshavam Prati Gacchati. When the rains fall from the sky, they fall on different peaks and there are different rivers which get formed because of that. But all these rivers finally come and culminate in the ocean. And the source of all the rivers is also the ocean. So in the same way, whichever path one takes, all the paths will lead to the Supreme One, absolute consciousness alone. So this is one phase of Ramakrishna's life where he tried different paths, different religions, and he experienced the oneness. More of this now we will take up in our next satsang. If in today's satsang anything you want to ask, share, you are welcome. Yes, Swatiji, you can unmute.
Okay, I got it now. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So I'm a little confused, which is why I want to clarify. I'm reading the Ramcharitamanas by Tulsidas.
Yes.
And the translation. So there he talks about Maya, and I just want to read this paragraph. When the soul realizes its purpose, but when Maya sees it loosening the knot, she creates many difficulties. She sends forth the riddhis and siddhis, which tempt reason to avarice, artifice, force, fraud, and so on. So, here I just got the feeling that it was Maya and a female villain, so to speak, who gets all this artifice. And what you said in the story of Maharishi, the goddess Kali is a female form. Yeah. And she's so powerful. And some of the words that you use today, also when Tulsidas talks about Ram, it's almost exactly the same. Not this, not this, no form, no shape, no, formless. It's almost the same. So there's a female god and a male god, and what is this all about? Why is everybody doing it differently? So I'm a little confused because you were so strongly saying the same thing for goddess Kali as Tulsidas was saying for Ram. And yet in his thing, he talks about Maya being the female sort of villain who creates all
Yeah.
the problems. And you said it's the same as Brahm. So now I'm totally confused.
So there are different levels. That's why this confusion is natural to arise. So from absolute level, when we see from the absolute level of one infinite consciousness, from that infinite level where there is no duality, there is no Maya, there is no form, there is no world, there is no individual. There is only oneness. So there is no Ram, Kali, nobody. That's the highest level. One. Second is that the level of creation. When we come into duality, then there is a creator. Now, who is that creator? That creator is Brahman invoking the power. Like today, I am a person who is invoking the power of speech, and then I am speaking. When I don't speak, then the power of speech is latent in me. I am not a speaker anymore. I am just a quiet individual. Same way, when Brahman invokes the power of Maya, now please remember, in this there is no gender. In Brahman there is no gender. In Maya also there is no gender. Like in speech, the power of speech, there is no male female power of speech. There is just a power of speech. It's a power. So Maya also doesn't have any gender. This Brahman using the power of Maya becomes creator, Ishvara. Now that creator is what we worship either as Ram or as Kali. Now both these are forms. But both these are forms of what? Of that one Brahman. So Brahman can appear as a personal God in a male form or a female form. And in both these forms, there is the Maya Shakti is embedded in both of them. So there is no there is no separate this thing like a female God is evil. The same Tulsidas ji will say that because he is considering Bhagwan Ram as the absolute, then he is saying Maya creates all the obstacles. But that same Tulsidas ji will also say that whatever happens, happens by the will of Lord Ram. So even if obstacles come, it is will of Ram only that is prevailing. There he is taking Ram as a form. So we have to understand, in some places Tulsidas ji says Ram is absolute Brahman, and some places he will say Ram is the form, Ishvara. In same thing in Ramakrishna ji's life also. For him, Mother Kali is the form of Ishvara. And Mother Kali only may put obstacles also so that the seeker overcomes them, and Mother Kali only will bring the Guru also and get him the knowledge and help him to overcome also. So as a Ishvara, it will be all done by that Supreme Lord using his power of Maya. So whether we say Ishvara did it or Maya did it, they both mean one and the same. So there is no, and also it is that certain types of obstacles are put for the jiva to exhaust certain types of karmas and also to get vairagya from the world. So it is not in the sense of torturing or troubling. And like you gave the example of the siddhis. In the context of siddhis, those siddhis are also an obstacle. They are great powers to become small, to become big, to become light, to become heavy. But from absolute standpoint, they are also obstacles in the path of a seeker. The seeker has to learn to overcome the temptation of having siddhis and using siddhis and getting fame through them. Then one can come to the absolute state. You are muted, Swati ji.
So there's no gender, right? I mean,
No,
this
no.
is just a poetic way. And so
Yeah.
that's what confused me. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Urvi ji had something to ask?
No, I mean, when you talk about his life, you find that it's really amazing. I mean, all the different episodes that you're telling us about, it's quite amazing, and sometimes you wonder whether it is real or not, but I guess it is. That's
Yeah.
all it's very inspiring, and at the same time, sometimes little confusing also, like Swati was saying, but yeah.
Yeah, Ramakrishna's life is like that. Sometimes it does confuse because many different levels he has experienced, and for us difficult to fathom this because in such a short life of 50 years he experienced such depth in spiritual life.
True.
So it does appear sometimes as though is it real or is it just an imagination? But him being a historical person and people around him they have seen all this. They have
Yeah.
documented it so well. And the greatest proof of all this also is Swami Vivekananda ji himself.
True.
That when he went to Ramakrishna, he was a non-believer of form because he was in Brahma Samaj, and Brahma Samaj does not believe in form worship. From there he went to Ramakrishna, and then what a transformation in his life. So what happens is, if we study Vedanta properly and we understand the different levels in spirituality, then we can understand this life of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa very beautifully, because he is like a synthesis of all different paths.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. I think it was very enjoyable.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Swami.
Hari Om, Swamiji. Thank you.
Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Hari Om.
Yeah, thanks.
Hari Om, Swami.